Swami Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Gauriya Guru Vaishnava Varga Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Text 10. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from Canto 2, Chapter 3, Text 10. Akama sarva kamo va, akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udaradhihi, moksha kama udaradhihi, tivrena bhakti yogena, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param, yajeta purusham param, akama sarva kamo va, akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udaradhihi, moksha kama udaradhihi, tivrena bhakti yogena, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param, yajeta purusham param, akama sarva kamo va, akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udaradhihi, moksha kama udaradhihi, tivrena bhakti yogena, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param, yajeta purusham param, akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udaradhihi, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param, akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udaradhihi, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param, akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udaradhihi, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param, akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udaradhihi, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param, akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udaradhihi, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param. Word for word. Akama, one who has transcended all material desires. Sarva kamaha, one who has the sum total of material desires. Va, either. Moksha kamaha, one who desires liberation. Udaradhihi, with broader intelligence. Tivrena, with great force. Bhakti yogena, by devotional service to the Lord. Yajeta, should worship. Purusham, the Lord. Param, the supreme whole. Translation. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the Personality of Godhead. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, is described in the Bhagavad Gita as Purushottama, or the Supreme Personality. It is He only who can award liberation to the impersonalists by absorbing such aspirants in the Brahma Jyoti, the bodily rays of the Lord. The Brahma Jyoti is not separate from the Lord, as the glowing sun ray is not independent of the sun disk. Therefore, one who desires to merge into the supreme, impersonal Brahma Jyoti must also worship the Lord by Bhakti Yoga, as is recommended here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhakti Yoga is especially stressed here as the means of all perfection. In the previous chapters, it has been stated that Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate goal of both Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. And in the same way, in this chapter, it is emphatically declared that Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate goal of the different varieties of worship of the different demigods. Bhakti Yoga, thus being the supreme means of self-realization, is recommended here. Everyone must therefore seriously take up the methods of Bhakti Yoga, even though one aspires for material enjoyment or liberation from material bondage. Akamaha is one who has no material desire. A living being, naturally being the part and parcel of the Supreme Whole Purusham Purnam, has as his natural function to serve the Supreme Being, just as the parts and parcels of the body, or the limbs of the body, are naturally meant to serve the complete body. Desireless means, therefore, not to be inert like the stone, but to be conscious of one's actual position and thus desire satisfaction only from the Supreme Lord. Srila Jiva Goswami has explained this desirelessness as bhajaniya parama purusha sukha matra svasukhatvam in his sandarbha. This means that one should feel happy only by experiencing the happiness of the Supreme Lord. This intuition of the living being is sometimes manifested even during the conditioned stage of a living being in the material world, and such intuition is expressed in the manner of altruism, philanthropy, socialism, communism, etc. by the undeveloped minds of less intelligent persons. In the mundane field, such an outlook of doing good to others in the form of society, community, family, country, or humanity is a partial manifestation of the same original feeling in which a pure living entity feels happiness by the happiness of the Supreme Lord. Such superb feelings were exhibited by the damsels of Vrajabhumi for the happiness of the Lord. The gopis loved the Lord without any return, and this is the perfect exhibition of the akamaha spirit. Kama spirit, or the desire for one's own satisfaction, is fully exhibited in the material world, whereas the spirit of akamaha is fully exhibited in the spiritual world. It's fully exhibited in the material, yeah. Thoughts of becoming one with the Lord, or being merged in the Brahma Jyoti, can also be exhibitions of Kama spirit if they are desires for one's own satisfaction to be free from the material miseries. A pure devotee does not want liberation so that he may be relieved from the miseries of life. Even without so-called liberation, a pure devotee is aspirant for the satisfaction of the Lord. Influenced by the Kama spirit, Arjuna declined to fight in the Kurukshetra battlefield because he wanted to save his relatives for his own satisfaction. But being a pure devotee, he agreed to fight on the instruction of the Lord because he came to his senses and realized that satisfaction of the Lord at the cost of his own satisfaction was his prime duty. Thus he became akama. That is the perfect stage of a perfect living being. Udara dhihi means one who has a broader outlook. People with desires for material enjoyment worship small demigods, and such intelligence is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita as Hrita Jnana, the intelligence of one who has lost his senses. One cannot obtain any result from demigods without getting sanction from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, a person with a broader outlook can see that the ultimate authority is the Lord, even for material benefits. Under the circumstances, one with a broader outlook, even with the desire for material enjoyment or for liberation, should take the worship of the Lord directly. And everyone, whether Nakama or Sakama or Mokshakama, should worship the Lord with great expedience. This implies that bhakti yoga may be perfectly administered without any mixture of karma and jnana. As the unmixed sun ray is very forceful and is therefore called tivra, similarly, unmixed bhakti yoga of hearing, chanting, etc. may be performed by one and all, regardless of inner motive. And again, the translation. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratushe Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. This is a very nectarian purport. It's unpacking a central theme we often hear throughout Srila Prabhupada's purports. I remember reading a book at my university, and it was discussing the sociological impact and development of ISKCON. And there were some interesting points in there, and one person wrote an essay analyzing, he actually went through every single one, this is a scholar, analyzing every single purport of Srila Prabhupada and compared it to all the previous Acharyas' commentaries. So he read through every single purport of Sridhar Swami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Jiva Goswami. And he compared Srila Prabhupada's purports to all of them. And very interestingly, he found most of it was entirely, not entirely, but most of it was a very sweet unpacking. There was many new things, but they were unpacking the intricacies of the previous Acharyas' purports. The few parts that were unique were, there was a few social issues. As you know, Prabhupada would mention maybe his issues, the issues of that he's encountered in his life history, or maybe relevant social issues at the time, such as the moon landing, so on and so forth. Then there was other social issues in regards to Varnashram and ethical dilemmas at the time, the misdirected civilization. And then the last major category of things that Prabhupada would feel the need to elaborate further on, that the previous acharyas maybe didn't comment on so much, is to, well, he didn't use this term, but that's the way I read it, is to smash the impersonalists. This big emphasis is really drawn out in Srila Prabhupada's purports, and rightfully so. We see here in this verse such directions are being taken. This whole thing is an unpacking of the various types of people, the three categories, the akama, the sarvakama, and the mokshakama. Akama, Sridhar Swami says, is a pure devotee. That's what it means. He's pure. He's pure in his desires because he is of no material desires. However, Jiva Goswami, as Srila Prabhupada mentions here in the purport, has explained this desirelessness in his sandarbhas, meaning someone whose only happiness is the happiness of the Supreme Lord. In worship of the Parampurush, his feelings of happiness, or the feelings of happiness that the Lord feels, that is the fullness of that devotee's own happiness. And if one, so that is the definition given of akama. This is a very high ideal, a pure devotee, which is of course synonymous to one whose only happiness is the happiness of the Supreme Lord, is what we are all aiming for. However, and of course if we are aspiring for such a state, maybe one can be considered also a pure devotee. Maybe isn't only necessarily one who has achieved the goal of pure devotion. A devotee is one who practices devotion. And so therefore, a pure devotee is one who practices pure devotion, even if we aren't necessarily complete in our execution or in our desires of it. Still, if we are practicing a bhakti that is, jnana karma dhyanavritam, it's empty of the various mishras, the various mixings of jnana and karma, then we are practicing to some degree, in some sense, pure devotion. Maybe we are not practicing it purely, but we are to some degree still pure devotees. Because we are practicing pure devotion. We are not pure devotees in the sense that we ourselves are purely practicing pure devotion. But still then, yes. Then we have sarvakama, those filled with the sum total of material desires. And this is very true. There are so many desires running around our bodies. We say our bodies are the homes of so many different bacteria and other cells and various things, but really functionally all our bodies are their residencies for such unlimited material lusts and desires. And then is moksha kama. Interesting is this order. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that the order of these words, sarva kama va moksha kama, is intentional. Sometimes we'll find that lists are put in different directions, or sometimes words are put counterintuitively in Shastra. And that is, of course, in order to maintain metrical intentions, the points of meter. Sometimes, because of the long vowel, short vowel, as we know, there's the laghu and there's the guru syllables, the light and the heavy syllables, and depending on their order one may mess up the meter one is in. However, sarva kamaha and moksha kamaha, they are both of the same metrical value. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur elaborates that actually what this is meant to indicate is this is going from the least desirous to the most desirous. Akamaha is the least lusty. Then he who is filled with all various material desires, the sum total of all lusts that the material world has to offer, he is considered a bit more lusty, a bit more entangled. But then most high, the uppermost lustful person, the uppermost person filled with false desires is the moksha kamaha. He who is desiring after the impersonal liberation. Why that is? Well, if we are to define desire, as Srila Prabhupada has here, following the purport of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that to desire or karma, lust, is the propensity to destroy distress and to create happiness, then, well, the akamaha obviously desires none of that. He desires only the gratification of Krishna senses. The sarvakamaha, well, he desires to destroy distress, but he only really desires to destroy them in a small level. He's somewhat short-sighted. He wants to only end the temporary, some temporary material suffering, not material suffering in general. And what joy does he want? What happiness does he want to create for his karma? Well, maybe the heavenly planets, That's if he's a pious sarva-kama. Today we don't see many of those. The majority don't even long for something as long-lasting as the heavenly planets, as fleeting and empty as they are. Most sarva-kamas today are happy with a television, sex, meat, gambling, intoxication, so on and so forth. But such happiness, because that is such a small and empty thing, with their limited intelligence, they can be said to not be so absorbed in a certain point of view, so absorbed in their karma. Small objects of desire need only small amounts of desire to be desired after. But the moksha kama, this is a more intelligent desire. This is a cessation of all material distresses, not just some, but all of them. And this is therefore a great desire and a great goal. And in order to have that great goal, one must be filled with a great desire for it. This is somewhat of a reversal of what we normally hear, but in personal liberation, sought after for happiness, a happiness that is void of the distresses and pains of the material world, that sort of karma is great. It is the greatest karma one needs, because it is the greatest goal one can have within the purview of that which can be lusted or desired after. And therefore Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that is why moksha karma is listed as the highest of all of these. It is listed at the end of the list because it is the greatest of these desires, of these false desires. And so we hear, this is the great paradox of the Mayavadi or of the Shunyavadi. They will say, we wish to go beyond the point of desire, we want to be liberated. But that itself is a desire, and it is a great one, it is a strong one, because it is desiring after the greatest of all goals. The Mayavadi or Shunyavadi, they will sit down and they will say, I am becoming free of desire. But that itself is a desire. And so we run past the I used to, when I was like 15 and I was being a little rebellious, and I'd read some Zen Buddhist books, and I remember reading, this is the problem that they get themselves in a corner. And so you'll find some schools of Buddhism will actually say one must lose the desire even to be liberated. And so they will try to act as if they are already free of all desires. They will pretend they are liberated, because if they are to aspire to be liberated, then that is a desire, and then they are caught within their own trap. The Buddha and the Buddhists, they reason well. It is not to say that they are totally incorrect. They reason well when they say desire is the root of all suffering. It is the source of all dukkha. That is correct. But they reason incorrectly when they say the mere evaporation of it, the mere moksha karma will annihilate that. As we are reading in this purport. Instead, so some schools, they will reason, so desires are bad. But wait a second, our sadhana, all of our sadhana towards our sadhya of moksha, towards our goal of moksha, that is all based on a desire for moksha. How can that be? If our philosophy is true, then maybe we are already liberated. And so they will say, we all actually already have Buddhahood. So they will pretend they are already the Buddha. They'll pretend they are already him, because if they try to be him, then that is a desire. So in pretending to already be him, at one point they will realize, oh, I was the Buddha all along. I was liberated all along. Of course, that itself then is a desire to realize that you're the Buddha all along. And such circular, paradoxical traps are impractical. It may sound cool, but functionally it is like a fox chasing its own tail. It's impossible. They will always have this desire, because they cannot have a goal to place that propensity that they have to desire for. The mere evaporation of desire is impossible. But the reorientation of one's desire to please the senses, not of oneself, but the senses of one whose senses are our souls are designed to please, that is feasible. And we read then that because this is the natural function of our soul, all peoples, if they do have all desires, even if they do have this desire for liberation, or even if they do not have any of these false desires, all peoples must engage in the worship of the Supreme Whole, the Purush, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Purushottam. And we know the very famous pastime in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Maitreya Muni is describing to Vidura a pastime illustrating this. Of course, we know there is a king named Uttanapad, and he has 2 wives, Suruchi and Suniti. And he favors Suruchi very, very much. He has a great amount of bias. Such a strong amount of bias that he virtually rejects Suniti. And both of these wives of his have their own respective children. Dhruv Maharaj, who is the son of Suniti, and Uttam, who is the son of Suruchi. And when one of the sons is named Uttam, we can get an idea, Uttam, the highest, the best, well, we can get an idea that there is some bias going on here. There is definitely a favorite child, although in this case the favoritism of the child is reflecting the favoritism of wives. There's also a story in the Bible there's the 12 tribes of Israel. They're these 12 brothers. They are the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. All of the ethnic Jews count their descent from one of these 12 brothers. They compose the whole nation of Israel, and their father was called Israel, so the 12 sons composed the 12 tribes. And there was one son who was most special to the father, but the father Israel showed an immense amount of bias, and we would watch cartoons of this in high school, and the father would give all of his sons plain regular clothes because they were tribal people. As we know, Srila Prabhupada says that the Jewish faith is, the Abrahamic faiths in general are therefore tribal people. These were tribal people, so they would wear very simple clothes, but he invested all of his time and energy into building a beautiful coat with lots of splendid colors, and he placed that on his favorite son, and the other sons were filled with anger. Why would he favor this other son so much? And we will hear in this pastime that the anger that comes from that is not so much from the favoring of one son over the other, but that one day Dhruv Maharaj, entirely out of childlike propensities, wanted to sit on the lap of his father, as his stepbrother Uttam was. His half-brother Uttam was sitting on the lap of his father, Uttanapad, and he thought, I also want my father's affection. So he innocently climbed onto the lap of his father. And climbing onto the lap of his father, Suruchi, she witnesses this, and filled with envy. We know this is one of the anarthas, one of the one of the Hriday Dorbalyas. Of the 4 types of anarthas, Hriday Dorbalya is one. Hriday Dorbalya is weakness of the heart, and envy is one of the great weaknesses of the heart. So filled with that envy, she sees and she says, no, and she pulls him off and says, you are an innocent child, so you do not know what foolish thing you have done. By climbing into the lap of your father, you are not qualified to do so. You were born from a faulty, degraded womb. Your mother, she is. What is the value of her womb? Clearly, I am the favored wife for a reason. But you do not know this, so I'll educate you on this. And then she says, you should engage in the devotional service of the Lord. And then if you do this properly, and if you do this with great intent and execute this properly, then maybe you will have the fortune of being born in a proper womb, a blessed womb, namely my womb. Of course, she wasn't saying this to actually encourage him in devotional service. Her meditation was twofold. One, she wanted to impress her husband, Uttanapad, to show, oh, great king, see, I am the favored wife, and I have earned such a title, because look how pious I am. I'm telling this young boy, 5 or 6, Srimad Bhagavatam says, he would have been 5 or 6, somewhere in that age range. Such a young child, I'm instructing him in devotional service. How pious am I? All a show. And secondly, she had the desire, thinking, now if the son renounces the world and leaves, then surely I will be able to see the weeping of Suniti. I'll be able to see her in her pains and sufferings, and then my joy will increase. Because she was not a particularly wonderful person, as we can infer from these thoughts. And she found, rather than finding pleasure this is an extreme perversion, rather than as the soul's true nature is to find pleasure in the senses of the Supreme Lord, she finds pleasure in the sufferings of the senses of others. So this is another anartha of the 4 types of anartha. Another category is aparad, and jiva aparad, to offend or to hurt the other jivas, is another aparad. Of course, the highest jiva aparad, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada says, is to not preach the Sankirtan movement. To not preach Krishna consciousness to other people is the ultimate offense, the ultimate damage, the ultimate insult, the ultimate act of violence against the other jivas. So, she does so. And Dhruv is filled with anger upon hearing these words. Like a snake that has been attacked, the hissing and sounds it makes, he is filled with anger. This is the great anger of the Kshatriyas. And he goes to his mother filled with rage, and he repeats the terrible words that he has heard. And his mother, she being a sweet devotee, devoted to the Lord, she breaks into tears at the hearing of such words. But then she tells Dhruva, do not hold bad feelings against your stepmother. Do not hold such bad emotions. Surely all that you have experienced is a result of past karmas. Those who are suffering now are merely suffering the sufferings they imposed on others previously. And if you hold such bad feelings, this will only prolong. These will only generate more karma phal, more fruits of your actions that will prolong your sufferings even further. She says like this. And then she says further, she says, actually, what your stepmother has said is correct. All that you can desire, that can come from the worship of the Supreme Lord. And doing so is the greatest process. Surely you should do it. She says, your ancestor, because of course, Dhruva comes from royal ancestry and the highest ancestry. He comes a descendant of Brahma and Swayambhu Manu, the great progenitor of the human race. And she says, look what great things your ancestor Manu achieved. Just by worship of the Lord, he executed perfectly all the Purusharthas. His all dharma, wealth, all of his desires were fulfilled, and finally he achieved liberation. And then furthermore, look at Brahma, what the greatest being in our universe. And look what he has achieved by devotional service. He received all the knowledge and potency to assemble all creation. The purport behind the explanation of this glories is she did not want to give, yes, of course, Dhruva could, by the glories of devotional service, achieve birth in the womb of Suruchi, and therefore achieve the love and affection of his father, and therefore his father's throne. But Suniti, she was implying what a vile and wretched goal. In comparison to all the devotional service can offer, even if one is sarva kamaha, even if one is longing merely after material desires, why would one want such an empty destination as the womb of her envious and vile co-wife? This reminds me of a pastime of Srila Prabhupada. When Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan with his disciples, they would go around, and this was in the early days, and ISKCON still doesn't have the respect necessarily of all of those who are intoxicated by the glories of their birth. But it does now. But back then it was a very difficult thing for many of the caste Brahmins and all to accept that these Westerners were going around. So sometimes they would take darshan of the many bona fide and beautiful deities and temples in the area of Vrindavan. Taking darshan, maybe some of them would speak to the local Brahmins and priests. And those who could speak English, they told them, they said, "It is very, very nice that you are chanting this Hare Krishna. This Mahamantra is very, very potent, and it can take you to very many great places. In fact, if you execute this devotional service very nicely, you will be able to, in your next life, take birth and become a Brahmin like me. And then you can engage in Pujari Seva like I am. And then you may go back home, back to Godhead." And Srila Prabhupada's disciples were very distressed, and they went to Srila Prabhupada and they said, this Brahmin, he has been saying like this and this and that, repeating all these things. Because of course that does not line up with our philosophy. Even a dog, if they were to chant, can go back home, back to Godhead, let alone a human born else in another, a mlecha country. And Srila Prabhupada, he heard this and he looked at them and he said, actually you should tell this Brahmin, this Pujari, you should tell him, it is very good that you are doing this Pujari Seva. If you execute it very nicely in your whole life, in your next life you'll be able to take birth in the Western countries, and doing so you'll be able to preach this Krishna conscious movement all around the world. Such was the transcendental humor of Srila Prabhupada. He really put them in their place. And this is a propensity to take such pride in one's birth. But even if one were to take the pride in one's birth, because of course taking birth in a Brahminical family is not a low thing, it is a result of good karmas, especially in Vrindavan Dham. But even if one were to think in such a way, why would one want to take birth in such a vile womb as that of Suruchi? This is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on the purport of Suniti's explaining the glories of devotional service. So she says, yes, she was right. This is actually a proper way to do so. So then in the middle of that night, Dhruva, he began and he left home, and he started walking out. And Narad Muni, who obviously is going around everywhere, he heard of this, and he was impressed. He thought, wow, this is something special. Here is a boy 5 or 6 years old who was going out with the intent so strong, such strong nishta, single-mindedness, in order to execute devotional service. And so he appeared before him and he said, this is the glories of the Kshatriyas. Such a small child who I can see, whose only desire really should be to play with toys and run around with his friends. So strongly he is determined to engage in tapasya. These are the glories of the anger of the Kshatriyas. We hear in Mahabharata when the Pandavas went out into exile. All the 5 Pandavas were doing various things. Arjuna had grains of sand, and every grain he would fling out would be 1 arrow he would fire into the armies of his enemies. Bhim was beating his chest like a lion, imitating the anger and fury that he will have on the battlefield when he is finally able to attack his enemies. And Yudhishthira Maharaj had his face covered. All that could be seen was a slight glow of his red eyes, because his fury was so strong that anyone who were to directly see those eyes would be burnt up by the intensity of his anger. This is the anger, the wrath of the Kshatriya. And so Narad Muni, he sees it and he is impressed. This is the world famous fury of the Kshatriyas. And then he says, but honestly, you should realize you are not this body. And he goes and he speaks very similar. He virtually says, Matra sparashastu kaunteya shitoshna sukadukadaha agama payano nityaha tan stitikshasva bharata. He speaks all these wonderful things. You must realize these are the reactions of your previous karmas, so on and so forth. He lists all these things, you must meditate, just give up this anger, meditate on the Supreme Lord, realize that you are not the doer. And then at the end he says, you're also a very young boy, maybe grow up a little. This is an intense tapasya. Sadananda only after so many years and was able to achieve the goal. And all these grown yogis spend so much time in samadhi and they barely achieve the goal of reaching the lotus feet of the Lord that you are aiming for. You are just a small child. Go back to your mother. Go back to your mother and grow up a little, and then you can come back. I'm not going to discourage this. This is a very nice goal, but you are too young for it. And then Dhruv Maharaj says, well, I'm sorry to be so inappropriate, so rash, but I cannot accept your words. You have spoken words for Brahminical ears, but my ears are the ears of a Kshatriya, and so your words have fallen flat. Please instruct me now how I may engage in devotional service so that I may get a kingdom not as great as my father, not as great as my grandfather, not as great as my grandfather, but greater than all of them. This is the glory that I want, and I will execute devotional service in order to achieve this. And so Narad says, well, okay then. He says, I will instruct you then. And he explains to him, of course, the process of murti worship that he should perform. And he gives him a very famous mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And it's interesting, at the age 5 or even 6, Dhruv Maharaj would not have been old enough to receive the Upanayanam, the giving of the Brahma Gayatri, Om Bhur, I won't say it. I don't know it. I shouldn't know it. But even though he was not given that, he was still given a Vaishnav mantra. The purport of this is that one does not need Brahminical, so-called, any of the Vedic rituals, any of the rituals of the Veda to get Vaishnav mantra. The Pancharatric mantras or the Bhagavat Marg is outside of the jurisdiction of these rules and regulations. Obviously we give Brahma Gayatri now to devotees, as was implemented by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but that's a tangent. Because the Vaishnavas, if they're qualified to get Vaishnav mantra, which is so high, surely they should be qualified to get the Brahma Gayatri, the Brahminical mantras. But anyways, the purport of this is Vaishnav mantras are outside such rules and regulations, because he was given one at such a young age. And being given this mantra, then of course, Narad Muni says you should go to Madhavan, among the bank of the Jamuna, where the lotus footprints of Shri Krishna reside. Some people sometimes ask, but wait a second, Dhruva was prior to the advent of Krishna, and Krishna only comes in one day of Lord Brahma. How can there be footprints there? We must simply understand that that because the Lord is eternal and his pastimes are eternal, his footprints are there from the previous day of Brahma. The actions of Krishna are lila, they are not karma, they are not subject to the decay of time. So then is bhakti. That's why we should not be discouraged on the path of bhakti. And all those, when we invite the lotus feet of the Lord into our hearts, no matter what we do, even if we stagnate completely in devotional service, those footprints remain. And one will eventually execute completely their devotional service. Such is the purport. Because these footprints, they could not be there. Krishna had not yet advented. As we know, Krishna advented only 5,000 years ago. So it was the remnants, the remaining footprints from a previous day of Lord Brahma. And so Narad discusses to him his sadhana. He must take baths 3 times a day, my spiritual master, His Holiness Radha Govinda Das Goswami, he often says he hears when he travels that sometimes people call ISKCON the food religion, but he also hears, especially within India, that sometimes people call us the bathing religion because we are so strict on observing cleanliness. But this is important in sadhana. So 3 daily baths Dhruva Maharaj take, and he must do 3 kinds of breathing exercises. And then with a pure mind, because of these breathing exercises, he should meditate on the form of the Lord. And I'm running out of time, so I won't go into the description that Narad Muni gives. But he gives a beautiful description of the Paramatma. And of course, then he meditates on that Paramatma in his heart. So Dhruva, then he goes and he begins to execute this. Because Narad Muni says, no matter which one of the 4 goals of life, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, no matter if you want any of these, you will get these if you engage in devotional service. Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport to that text. He says, dharma obviously will be executed. Because the essence of all religious functions is the lotus feet, is to surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord. How quickly we have this in ISKCON. We read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna mantra hoite hobe Shongshar mochon. By the chanting of the Krishna mantra, samsara is ended. And then Krishna nama hoite pabe Krishner choron. And then by the name of Krishna, one can attain the lotus feet of Krishna. Artha, all wealth, the devotee does not have to worry for maintenance at all. All wealth, all things that they require will naturally be given by the Lord if they merely focus single-mindedly on the execution of devotional service. Kama, well, all the desires of the devotee are fulfilled by Krishna. That is Krishna's promise. And then moksha, forget about getting liberation. The pure devotee, or the pure devotee of the Lord is to be considered already liberated. So all 4 Purusharthas are already fulfilled by the execution of devotional service. Then Narad Muni leaves, and I'm running out of time, so I won't go into it. He goes and tells, of course, Dhruva's father is very upset in his absence, and he speaks to him, and he says, don't worry, he consoles him. Dhruva Maharaj's glories will be spread all over the world, and he will come back home safely. And then what happens is Dhruva then performs his tapasya. Dhruva, he is doing this yoga. For the first month, he eats only every 3 days berries and roots. Or what is it? Yeah, fruits and berries every 3 days. And then for the second month, he eats only dry grass and leaves every 6 days then. Then for the third month, every 9 days, he drinks a little bit of water. Then for the 4th month, he inhales breath. Only once every 12 days he takes 1 breath. And then in the 5th month, in such a strong form of tapasya, of meditation, of austerity, he lifts his leg up and stands only on 1 leg. What does Srila Prabhupada say? He says, Udara dhihi, one who has a broader outlook, one who is intelligent, must engage in this process. What we can tell from this pastime is even if one is sarvakama, even if one is desiring only material things, one must execute devotional service properly. With such intensity, Dhruva Maharaj is executing this. What then to speak of those of us who are akamaha, who see as our only goal, our only purpose, our only reward for bhakti is bhakti itself? How much strongly then, with how much intensity, with how much austerity should we execute devotional service? So intense is his tapasya just for some material reward. How much stronger should our tapasya be? Our Ekadashis are not even by comparison a feast, but by comparison to this, they are such a great indulgence. Which is fine. We need the strength to preach the Sankirtan mission. This is what has been given to us by our Acharya. But still, bhakti, even for material purposes, is not something to be half attempted. It is to be fully attempted with full commitment. So then, standing on a leg, still like a column, that is holding up a building, Dhruva Maharaj is there performing tapasya. And he stands on one leg. He is standing only on a toe. And when that toe pushed down on the earth, it is considered that the earth shook like an elephant on a boat. And it fell down. It sank. It sank half a pradesh. A pradesh is around 5 inches. So 2.5 inches, the whole earth sank. All the 3 worlds began to tremble. And because Dhruv Maharaj, meditating on the Paramatma, became one with the Paramatma. One with the Paramatma in the sense of strength. Srila Prabhupada says in his purport, in the same way that a human being, even though he cannot move as quickly as a jet, if he is in a jet, he will move as fast as it moves. In the same way, becoming one with the Paramatma, still a tiny, infinitesimal jiva soul, he began to have all the weight of Vishnu. And having all the weight of Vishnu, he also had all the all-pervadingness of Vishnu. And having that all-pervadingness, his control of his breath began to suffocate all the beings in the material world. And all the beings suffocated then ran to the super soul, to Vishnu, and they told him what to do. They complained and they prayed, "You are the shelter of all worlds." And he says, "Don't worry, I've got this sorted. I know why this is happening. This is Dhruv, Dhruv Maharaj. I will go and I will give him what he wants." I'll wrap up soon. Won't go. I was going to go into Dhruv Maharaj's adult pastimes, but we won't have time for that. So then Dhruv Maharaj, he is so strongly meditating on the Lord in his heart, unbroken in his intensity. But then suddenly the Supreme Lord, he disappears from his heart. And Dhruv, it is said he opened his eyes. Why did he open his eyes? Not because his meditation was broken and therefore he just didn't know what to do. He opened his eyes because he wanted to cry. So strong was his fixation upon the Supreme Lord. But as he opened his eyes, ready to cry, instead he saw that Supreme Lord who was in his heart before him. And he began seeing this beauty before him, seeing what Narad Muni described, he who is Ghana Shyam, who has the dark, beautiful blue skin. Seeing him before him, he was filled with ecstasy. His eyes drank the beauty of the Lord. It was like his mouth was kissing the lotus feet and his arms hugging the Supreme Lord. So such beauty was there. But he began, and actually in the Sanskrit, it's described that he had not 2 arms, because in Sanskrit there's the jewel case for 2, but there was many arms. It is considered there were many arms. Why? Because he was moving so frantically in his ecstasy of devotion that it seemed like he had many arms in his desire to hug the Lord. But he could not speak any words. Because he was a small child, he did not know any Sanskrit to appropriately glorify the Lord. So then the Supreme Lord places his conch shell on his head, and in Dhruva's mind it becomes filled, all knowledge of Sanskrit, Vedanta, the purports of all Shastra, everything fills the mind of Dhruva Maharaj as the Supreme Lord Vishnu places his conch shell on his forehead. Then these wonderful prayers, again, I won't get into them, I'll wrap up soon. These wonderful prayers are spoken by Dhruva Maharaj, and he glorifies the glories of the Lord. How he has given knowledge to Brahma, how the glory found even in the Brahman effulgence of a personalist, as we hear here, moksha kama, the moksha of merging into the equilibrium of the divine effulgence. Even that joy is nothing compared to the joy found in Brahman. What to speak of the joy of the heavenly planets or of earthly rule, which are, at least the joy of Brahman is eternal in a sense. Obviously we know in Chaitanya Charitamrita it says that eventually a jiva will fall from Brahman if they achieve that liberation. But what to speak of that? This material world's joy, or the joy of the heavenly planets, is cut apart by the sword of time. How one who uses this, so he glorifies the devotional service of the Lord. And then of course the Lord says, you will get the kingdom. Not only will you get that kingdom, you'll get a greater kingdom than any of your ancestors. I will give you Dhruv Lok, the pole star, which is never destroyed. And your brother Uttama, he will pass away. And his mother, after him having passed away in the forest on a hunting exhibition, she will run in madness after him and she'll be consumed in a forest fire. And then you will rule for 36,000 years, so on and so forth. I'll have to condense. So then Dhruv Maharaj, he leaves, but he is dejected. He is not happy. And Vidura asks Maitreya, he achieved such a great goal in 6 months. So many people desire to go to achieve a spiritual planet, liberation, and they do for so long meditation. Why was he not happy? And Maitreya answers, Dhruva lamented. And this lamentation brings us to this verse again. The lamentation was, he said, I asked for the association of devotees. I asked for devotional service. And instead Vishnu gave me. He gave me all these false desires, these empty desires, these shards of glass that I was longing after. I saw a diamond. And I asked for it. But Vishnu, knowing those false and empty desires that I had for sense gratification in my heart, he awarded me instead those shards of glass. What is the point of wanting to gratify this sack of organs and skin and flesh that is so empty, using the Lord as a material desire tree when he himself can give the highest and greatest of all of rewards, namely devotional service to himself? So foolish he felt. I am like a beggar who is asking a great king with all opulence merely for a few grains of rice. So this is the glories. When one sees the Supreme Lord, one realizes all of these other desires, the sarva kama, because our bodies are flesh, of organs, of stool, of mucus. They have all these things, but as I said earlier, they are bodies of sarva kama, of all these various desires. But if one were to get darshan, if one were to see the beauties of that Lord, of that Supreme Lord, even that is the beauties of Vishnu. Vishnu is not having the 4 extra beauties, the 4 extra qualities which are all described as madhur, as beautiful. How much more so if we are to try and engage in devotional service to see Krishna? How much more so will that ride out any of the sarva kama, of all the desires in our heart? How much more will that drive out all the moksha kama, the desire for liberation, all these things? And then we can be akama, that highest point mentioned in this verse, devoid of all false desires, devoid of any desire other than to please the Supreme Lord. So this is the purport. Why? So devotional service should be done by anyone, because it can give you all that you want. As we see here, Dhruva Maharaj got all that he wanted. But the grand paradox, as we know, Srila Prabhupada struggled so much in his Grihastha life to make money. And yet he made so much money when he renounced the world and started ISKCON and traveling, preaching the glories of Mahaprabhu. That is a great paradox. Once one executes devotional service by that darshan of the Lord, by the revelation that it gives one, all those desires that one had before seem so empty and fleeting. Once one achieves them, once one gets one realizes that they are worthless. So no matter what one wants, one can engage in devotional service, and because as Srila Prabhupada says, it is a natural nature of the soul, everyone is qualified for it. The various Brahminical duties, one is maybe not qualified for because they are based not on one's true nature but on one's conditioned nature. They are based on the conditionings of the material world. But one's true spiritual nature, the Jaiva Dharma, is Krishna Prem. One's true Jaiva Dharma, the purpose, the Dharma of the soul, is to engage in devotional service. Therefore, everyone is qualified and ready for it, and no matter what desire one has, one should engage in it because one will receive the object of that desire. Therefore, it is of great intelligence, of the broad-minded, of the udaradhihi, one who has a broader outlook, who really realizes the essence of all things, no matter who they are, they should engage in devotional service. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhya evachapatidanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.